When you first launch the Search and Play app, you'll see this screen. This comes up every time, and it has contact information for me and a few other things. But to actually use it, just go ahead and click here on that button. Now, what I'm going to be explaining here is the way to use the Search and Play app, specifically in this tutorial for broadcasters who are using the Swing Thing library to broadcast shows on the air. And this will help you, I think, keep track of the shows that you played. There are actually 1,000 shows in the collection here. You can see that right there. And obviously, if you run a show or several shows back to back, and then you may repeat that once a week, that schedule, you don't want to repeat shows accidentally because you lost track of which ones you ran. And that's one of the things that the Search and Play app will help you to do, to schedule shows and to keep track of what is currently available and what needs to be held back for whatever period of time you want. You can see here that I set 1,095 days. I think was it like 3 years before any one show could repeat. But that in this scenario might include only running 1 or 2 shows a week. If you're going to run them more frequently, you may have to shorten this, but you can set this to whatever you want and then just click apply, and then it will calculate the play dates based on when a show was last aired, and it'll let you know when that show can be used again. There's also some tabs along the top here, and in fact there's also these 2 tabs up here. We're on the Shows tab right now, and then the tabs within that for the Smart Search, the Availability List, which we're looking at now, and then a detail page where you can get a little more up close and personal looking at the details of a show. The section over here is whenever you want to schedule shows for a particular date, this will give you a way of seeing what you've selected and putting them in the order that you want them to play. You also have the option to print out the schedule for the day if somebody's going to go and pull these shows and put them in your automation system, for example. Or you may want to plan a week ahead, in which case you can print the whole week that you scheduled, so you'll put it up on the wall, they can see what it is. This other button down here will print out data sheets that list all the critical information about the shows and gives you room to write by hand the dates that you want to run the shows on. So we've tried to make this as convenient as possible for as many different types of users as we could come up with. Each one of these columns, when you're looking in the availability list, are sortable, and you can see that the serial number or the show number is currently highlighted in yellow here, and this is a kind of a purple background on this header bar. If I click on any one of the column headings, it will toggle between ascending and descending. So now with the green bar along the top, this is for descending. So all the serial numbers are now listed in descending order. Here they're listed in ascending order. You'll notice that these are not contiguous. In other words, 105 isn't followed by 106, but by 115. The show numbers have evolved over the course of many, many years that Fred was working on the show. And occasionally he would do a show and then some years later get some more interviews and decide to just redo that show with the more up-to-date interviews. Or a show, for one reason or another, he decided to retire. So the numbers are not sequential, but they are in order, and each one of these represents a complete show. Because you can sort the columns, you'll be able to find things more quickly, and especially when you get, well, let me just go through these quickly here. Some of the shows are part 1, part 2, part 3 of the same show. So you can see here the part number of however many there are. So if I scroll down here a little ways, you'll see that this is part 2 of number 2 of a 4-part series. So that way, if you want to run them either back to back when they're just the same one show, or several shows on the same theme. Some stations like to run those as a block. Other stations put a week or something between them. So you can do it however you'd like. The show name here, again, this is sortable in ascending and descending order. And so if you're looking for something by name, it makes it easy to find. This INT, this stands for interview shows. This is a show where Fred did an interview with one or more people in the show and surrounded those interviews with music that was relevant. So if you're looking for a show that is got a lot of interviews in it, then you can toggle this, and in descending order you'll see them all indicated by a dot. So anyone that has a dot in this column is a show with an interview. The featured is kind of like a sub description of the show name. So 50 Years of the Miller Tradition, and this one shows that there's a guest, Larry O'Brien. And you can hover over these to get more information. If I hover over here, I'll see that, but if I hover over here, I'll be able to see the full playlist for each of the shows. Now, these other columns here, OE, HJ, J, V, C, S, B, 0, O, and pace and sequence. These all have to do with the when we decided to make this database, I asked Fred to go through every show and fill out a form for every one of them to tell me information that we might use to help programmers at radio stations, broadcasters, be able to select shows that would be complementary to one another. So OE, when you click on that, that simply stands for odds and ends. Now, a show with odds and ends just means that the show doesn't have any single theme, but rather is just kind of a mix based on Fred's tastes. And those shows are often good as fillers. Like if you need to just fill in a little block of time because you didn't have enough commercials, let's say, to fill a full hour. Most of the shows are 42 minutes, give or take a few seconds in length. But if you need some filler, odds and ends are always a good option to just do some filling. This next one, HJ, stands for heavy jazz, and that's kind of a subjective term, but my father Fred used to refer to some of the shows as heavy jazz, meaning that there are some stations that just wanted to stay clear of like a honking saxophone sound. Fred would just kind of judge a show based on that kind of content, whether or not it was heavy jazz or kind of a light jazz. If it's just kind of a light jazz mood, it would be under the J category here. V means vocals. So if the show is predominantly full of vocals, then you might want to pick one of these. Almost every show will have some vocals in them, but when the show is predominantly that way, then Fred indicated that here. C stands for a show that is kind of centered around a composer. Like Duke Ellington or Henry Mancini, so it would be a show featuring the works of a certain composer. S, this stands for a show that is featuring certain sidemen, or women. So the people who are members of the band but not the leader of the band are usually covered pretty well under this category here. You'll often find that there's a blend of these. You'll notice that there's more than one dot that may apply to any one show, so it gives you a pretty good sense of what the show is going to sound like before you've even heard it. B, this means that the main featured character would be a band leader. O is kind of a catch-all for anything that doesn't fall under these other categories. The pace of the show can be anything from 1 to 5. So the larger the number, the more up-tempo the show. So if you want to do kind of a mix where you change the pace of the show, you can go by these numbers to try and pick based on that. Now the column for sequence and play date are really, these two work together. And you can see over here that if I'm going to change, I'll explain what this drop down does in a moment, but I'm going to select here so that you can see that on October 12th, which has already passed, we had four shows that were all selected on that day. Now if I sort by play date here, you'll be able to see them together. So on the 13th there were all these, and on the 12th there were these. These are a little bit lighter in color, letting you know that these are shows from days past. So these are shows that are now waiting for this number of days to go by from this date before that show can be used in another broadcast. That way you don't overdo it. You don't play a show more than once, too close together. And then you'll see here that the sequence number represents the order that you want to play them in. So you can just change those numbers by clicking in these boxes here after you've added the shows. And I'll show you how that's done in a moment. All right, so that's kind of a general overview of this. Now, typically the availability list comes in handy for choosing the shows that you want to run based on, all these different criteria. However, if you go here to the Smart Search list, what this does is it just has a single field, and you can just type in a search. You can look for, it doesn't have to be a complete sentence. It can be 1 or 2 or 10 words. But the idea is that whatever you type in here, it'll try and find as many occurrences of that word or combination of words, and then it will rank the show here in the hits column based upon the number of times that term showed up. So for example, when I click on Glenn Miller in the movies, oh, I'm sorry, I've got to type something in here first. So let me just type Miller, and I just hit enter or return. And you'll see that here, every time the word Miller appears, it's highlighted in red. So that's the way that this works, and it just counts the number of those and indicates it here. It'll give it a higher ranking if it's up here in the title. So Glenn Miller music from the movies, that's in the title. That obviously should get more emphasis than if it's just a Miller tune playing in a set that may even be played by another band. So it gives more emphasis up here. So this is a smart search, and it does a pretty good job of finding what you're looking for. So let's go for Hoagie Carmichael. I just can type Hoagie, and that'll find Remembering Hoagie parts 1, 2, and 3. And then there's another one on Hoagie. So you've got a lot of different shows, and you can see here it'll tell you whether they're interview shows. And if you're looking for something that is predominantly Hoagie, you'd probably go with this. If you just want a little taste of Hoagie, you could probably go with this one down here, for example. And when you click on one of these, it'll show the contents of that particular show, so you can see exactly where the word or words that you are searching for show up. Over here is the name of the show, and over here is the theme. So it kind of repeats this information, but it has a little more room. And then here you'll see if any of these have been checked that apply, it'll give you a little bit more information about it. And down here it'll let you know this one has a lot of vocals in it, because the high-lows are a vocal group. The show is also talks a lot about some composers. I'm not sure who, but I guess, well, Hoagie Carmichael. And then down here it would fit nicely in a jazz set. And then down here where it says available for broadcast, that is actually, you can change that if you find a show that you never want to repeat. Just check no, and then it won't come up in any of your searches when you want to add something. But if you want it to be a usable show, just leave it the way I set it, and then it will make sure that the shows that you have to choose from are shows that have actually been approved by Fred when he was alive for radio broadcast. The reason that he did this is because there were some of the shows that he did that were good, but really not broadcastable, either because Fred may have made some mistake or error that he later caught, or something for some other reason. Maybe it just wasn't a good enough show, but he wanted to keep it around because he liked it, but he didn't really think it was good enough to put on the air. So, you can just look down here and you'll know whenever you do a search up here that whatever comes up is marked as yes. If you pick a show, like let's say you want to do Remembering Hoagie, you just select it from here and then you can set a play date for it right here. Just click in this little green box and it will come up with today's date, and you can choose that date or any other date that you want to broadcast the show. So I will go ahead and let's just make this for the 21st. And then that's all you have to do. Now that show is now scheduled for the 21st. Now it's not going to do anything. It's just going to be, it's not going to load your automation system. But what it will do is it will mark the show as having been scheduled, and then it will wait to make it available again until after this number of days have passed the broadcast date. So this is the simple search that we use here. It's smart. It finds things, and I use this most of the time to find whatever I'm looking for. By the way, if let's say I scheduled this and then I decided I wanted to remove it from the schedule, I could just click down here on the scheduled air date. That would bring it up. Or if I was on the availability list and I knew what date I wanted to look for, I could just select that date. Like if I choose the 14th, these are the shows that were scheduled for the 14th. But if I come back here and choose the 21st, it shows me whatever I have picked for the 21st. One other little thing, if you happen to notice when you're clicking around in here that things aren't updating, just find a blank area somewhere, like this gray area up here is a good area just to click, and then that kind of updates the window. So if you run into that problem, you can. Let's just add a couple more here. I'm going to do it from the availability list tab, but I'll just choose this Woody Herman show. And well, that one's already scheduled, so we'll just, I probably wasn't paying attention when I looked at it here. Oh yeah, you see all of these are scheduled. So let's pick a different one. Let's go, okay, let me show you this drop down. This drop down will filter what shows up in here based upon one of three possible criteria. The first one is just show me all the shows. So regardless of whether a show has been scheduled or not, they can all appear in here and you can sort. If a show is available for broadcast, that is to say that if it had previously been scheduled, then this number of days must pass before that show can be used again. And once that number of days pass, then the show would show up as currently available in this list. And it'll say available over here. If, on the other hand, the show has been scheduled or was scheduled sometime in the past, that's what this shows you, all the shows that were scheduled. So let's just say that today's the 14th, so that shows up in red, and the ones that are lighter, like a light gray, those are the ones that are from days past, and then the ones that are in a darker black color are the ones that are upcoming. So let's just pick this one here for the 21st. And when I click on that, what is happening is that when you normally click here, it's because you want to set a play date. You can do it from here or from other locations, like I showed you, the little box that you had over here. But if the show's been scheduled, you can restore it, meaning that you basically take it out of the schedule. That's really what that means. Otherwise, just click on the word darn and it won't change anything. So in this case, because I chose that one, it's just letting me know that I shouldn't be able to reschedule this until 1,095 days have passed from the day that it broadcasts. So I'm just going to click restore, and you'll notice that when I do this, date will go away. and now that show is available. So now I can schedule it for another day if I want. Now it won't show up in that list there. I mean, it will, only because I'm in here, but if I click away, you're going to see this one disappear. So as soon as I click up in this gray area, that goes away, because that one is now available and it doesn't belong in the not available category. So I can go here to find that show again and then do it. So if you can find the show by just looking under the title and just scroll down, or you can do a smart search to find it over here. And if you're in the smart search area, then you can schedule it right from there. And then the other place is let me just click on one of these. This is A Date with the Duke. I'll click on that. And that takes us over to all the detail about that show here in Show Details. The Show Details area is a lot more advanced. It gives you more power when it comes to doing a search. So if you want to get really, really particular, you can click on Enter Advanced Find Mode, and then you can enter what it is that you're looking for. So let's just say hoagie. We'll stay on the hoagie path, and then we'll see if there's anything that is mostly relaxed. And I could check any of these. I could also primarily male vocalist if I want. So all three of those things all have to evaluate to true, and if so, when I do the find, it will try and find those shows that match that criteria. Let's see what happens. And it found 3 shows. So all 3 of these shows are vocal, right? And this one is jazz, but not heavy jazz. And it's about a composer. And then also, in this case, it's also about a band leader, Louis Armstrong, and I forget Vicky's last name, and Hoagie and Tony. So you can, and over here you can kind of see the, what the primary things are, vocals, and how Fred classified those. If the show had been scheduled, you would see its scheduled air date over there. So this just gives you a way of finding these, and so you could click on any one of them now and it'll take you to that record, and then you could add that in to a play date. So that's basically the way that works. I could get more into the advanced find mode. There are a few other things here, but I'm not going to do that in this movie. The last thing I want to show you about here is the overview, and we'll also talk a little bit about printing. If you click on Overview, the overview will give you just kind of a view of all the shows. Now you can see up here, this is telling you that there are 1,000 shows in this current found set. I can click on one of these and I could do a find here, like here. And now you can see that this is showing a 3. That means that there are 3 of 1,000 possible shows that are currently selected. And so now I can go to the overview, and that just shows me those 3. So the overview just kind of gives me a broad view, like kind of a list view of whatever came up in a search. And then click on Return if I just want to go back to where I started from. Now the last thing I want to show you about is printing. You have, whenever you've scheduled a show, let's go to the availability list and let's look for shows that are not currently available, which means shows that were scheduled. So I choose a date from here to see what, if anything, had been scheduled for that day. And then I can decide on the sequence, the order that I want them to be in. I could make this 1, I could make this 2, and I could make this 3. 1. And then when I click outside there, these will always sort in that order. So that would be the order the shows would play in. So if you have somebody who's going to pull the shows and they just need to see what they need to pull, you can print the day, and I'm just going to open in PDF preview so you can see what that would look like. Or if I have shows printed in that week or selected for that week, What you want to do is if you're going to print a week, you want to go back to the day that you want to be the first day of the week. So it's not a Monday is always the first day of the week or Sunday is always the first day of the week. The first day of the week, it's a 7-day week based on whatever date you choose here. So here, if I come back and I choose, let's say, the 7th, well, there's nothing selected on the 7th, but if I were to come over here and choose, let's say, the 12th, then this will show what shows I selected for the 12th. And now if I want to print that week, it will count 7 days from the 12th, and it will list all the shows that I have scheduled for that week. So here you can see on the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th of that week, these are the shows that I scheduled. And so you can easily see what the show number is. If you need to pull a show, you can see the name of the show and the basic information. Okay, one last thing I'm going to talk about here is the actual library. The Swing Thing library is available in actually 3 different formats. One of them, this is the one that I usually sell to non-broadcast people who just want the music and want to put it on their iPod or their, on a portable device or put it on their computer. That's where this one comes in. You can notice it's 64 gigabytes. It's quite large. And there are 2 folders in here. One has some, even though this is not being used for broadcast, I include the broadcaster's information just in case somebody wants to use this for broadcast, but I actually would recommend using this one down here instead. We'll talk about why in a moment. But here there's openers and closers for the show, and there's a handful of 30-second promos that you can run for the show. They're generic. They can work in any station. And so that is if you're not a broadcaster. If you're a broadcaster, I would most likely be sending you this copy of the library. Now the main difference between the two of them, let me shut this up for a moment here and then I'll show you. When you look at them from this perspective, they look pretty much the same. What is different is the library folder. The library folder up here for iTunes is organized so that the entire library could literally be drag and dropped right into iTunes, and iTunes would know how to organize it, and it would do that based on the title and theme of the show. And so here it shows you the way shows would be organized. Like here for guest Andy Russell, we actually had 2 shows, part 1 and 2, and each one of those has 9 segments. When Fred finishes a segment of a show, that's a point where you could insert a commercial. And you want to listen for him saying blah, 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 blah on Swing Thing. Then he'll pause for a beat and then he'll resume. So that would comprise one of these. Every one of these segments will end with Fred saying on Swing Thing as a cue to the board operator to run a spot. You can just let them run right through if you don't have any spots to put in there. Like I said, 48 minutes or 42 minutes is the normal length of a show, roughly, and so that leaves you about 12 minutes where you can run spots. So if you were not a radio station, I would have sent you this one. You could just use it with iTunes to keep track of everything. And you'll notice that all the shows beginning with guest are first. And then if I scroll down, you'll see that then the shows start showing up as themes. In other words, these shows don't have a guest interview, but the theme is whatever it says. So that's the way that those are organized for the iTunes version. But if you're a broadcaster, then they're going to be organized by number. be exactly the same content once you get down to a show. Like if you look in here, show 105 is in the parent folder for everything that falls inside of 100, and there are your segments there. And I've also included, in this case, a playlist PDF for every one of the shows, so that if you just want to print that out when you need it, you can just grab it right from that directory. So that's the main difference between these two libraries. So if you're a broadcaster, I would normally send it this way because it's easier to find shows by number than searching by name. Going back to the Search and Play app itself, let me bring that back up here. If you decide on a show, all you have to do is look at the show number, like number 1239, mentioned there, and I could just come here and look for the 1200 folder, and then in there would be 1249 right there. So if I was going to queue this up, I'd either point to this with the automation system or drag it into the automation system or do whatever you need to do, and then you'll have these segments. Now there's one other version that I also have of the Swing Thing library. This is called Swing Thing Singles. And in this case, there's no breaks between segments, so each show is just a single file. So instead of having 8 or 9 segments, you could just run the show, and this would work for any station that doesn't try and insert spots in the middle of a show. But you're only going to have 41 minutes, so you may need to do some filling for the rest of the hour, depending on your format. These are also at a lower bit rate. These were originally encoded this way for the Swing Thing stream that you can listen to on the swing-thing.com website. And so when a show plays, it just plays a single file, and then it goes to the next show and plays that. So if you want the Swing Thing Singles version, we can certainly get that to you. If you haven't already received a copy of the library and you only have the Search and Play app, which is a free download, you can still listen to the shows, and that's what this little section up here is about. This is the preview area for previewing a show to see if it's what you want or not. You can click up here where it says, right now it says use many external windows, and you'll see if I click on that, it actually gives me a drop down. So I could choose to play a show in this window only, in which case let's say that we'll go to this Remembering Hoagie Part 2, play in this window only, and then when I click Start the Show, it'll appear in this window right here.
We're remembering Hoagie.
So that's one way of doing it. If you want to preview more than one show, and you might want to kind of compare them to see what might segue better, you can use the Use Many External Windows option. So when you do that, and by the way, if you don't see this bar up on top, by default I usually collapse it by clicking this icon down here. If you don't need it, you can collapse it, and I think it comes collapsed, but if you ever need to open it, you can, and that just lets you see a little bit more about what's going on. But let's say that maybe I want to preview all 3 of these shows. So I'll choose this one, and I have this set to Use Many External Windows. When I click on that, it opens up a new window. Now I can go to this next one, click on that, start the show.
We're remembering Hoagie.
And so that brings up Part 2. And you can see that whichever one is currently active, you can see the player. And you can click Start the Show on any one of these.
We're remembering Hoagie.
To jump back and forth.
We're remembering Hoagie.
So you can do a little preview and make sure that that's exactly what you want to do. Or the other option, there's one other option, and that is to use a single external window. So that would mean that if I choose a show and say play it, it'll pop up.
Hoagie Carmichael, and our guests are his two sons.
And you can see here it says Part 2. So if I now choose Part 3, that window will update to Part 3.
Remembering Hoagie.
So that's how you use this section up here. And I've tried to make it flexible enough that you could do whatever you need to do whenever you need to do it. Anyway, yeah, that's basically how you use this system. I didn't cover every little button, but I think most of the rest of it you can figure out on your own. And of course, if you have any questions about using this, you can always give me a shout. Again, you can get my contact information right down here by clicking on More. And that gives our phone number and our web address as well as my email. So I hope you enjoy using this. Sorry for the long movie, but I did want to cover all the bases. I hope you found it useful.